If you struggle with sleep, melatonin can be a great option, proven to work without the crazy side effects you can get with prescription drugs. The most relaxing way to enjoy melatonin before bed is with a hot mug of Dream Hot Cocoa with melatonin from our sponsor, Beam. It comes in a variety of delicious flavors, naturally sweetened with no added sugar and only 15 calories. I'm a big fan of the cinnamon cocoa flavor. I've been recommending Beam for a while now, and there's never been a better time to finally try it because right now they're giving you up to 50% off their biggest sale of the year. Don't forget, Beam also makes a perfect holiday gift. Go to shopbeam.com/David and use code David. The link is in the description. Sitting for hours can wreak havoc on your health and posture. I only use standing desks. A standing desk helps me get the creative juices flowing. It helps me focus and stay productive. And the only standing desk I've been using for years is Uplift Desk. Long before they became a sponsor, I'm sitting at it right now. Uplift desks are rock solid. They offer way more customization options unlike other brands. You can choose the shape, material, color, accessories. The possibilities are endless. Go to upliftdesk.com/Pacman to receive up to $300 off plus 4 free desk accessories. The link is in the description. Vice President Kamala Harris conceded the presidential election yesterday. She called Donald Trump and conceded privately, and then she gave a speech. She gave a speech in Washington, D.C. around 4 p.m. Eastern, and it shouldn't be notable. It really should be no big deal, but it is a big deal that she conceded the election without claiming that there was fraud. She conceded the election without alleging that it was rigged. She conceded the election without saying that the media and the opposite party and election officials and law enforcement and voting and election monitors conspired against her in a nearly impossible to pull off multi-point conspiracy. She somehow got through the speech without inciting a riot or suggesting that she would incite a riot. And this would normally be something that we don't even mention, but it's notable because of the alternative. Of course, Donald Trump doing all of those things in 2020 and even claiming fraud this time around until it became clear that he would win. Now, we're going to get to that. I say sarcastically, thank God that there was no fraud this time around, right? We'll get to that a little bit later. Here is Kamala Harris saying, we have no choice but to accept the results of the election. Of course, there is a choice. There's doing what Trump did last time, but reasonable people don't have a choice. Here is Kamala Harris.
Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
It's almost like sarcastic applause. It's almost like tongue-in-cheek cheer, because we all know that if the results had been different, Donald Trump would not be saying anything like this. Of course, he wouldn't be participating in a transfer of power since he wouldn't be involved in it because he's not in office right now. But Trump would not be saying, well, I lost and you've got to accept the results. You win some, you lose some, and sniffing. He would have been sniffing, but he wouldn't have said any of those things. And Kamala Harris, it's a bizarre upside down world. And I know that the last couple of days have been tough. And I don't know that this is much. I don't know that we can take much solace in this, but it's an upside down world when the normality comes from the candidate that lost simply saying, I lost. That's it. It's not, let's find fake electors. It's not, let's threaten people on the phone with phrases about 11,000 votes.
I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
It's just, we're going to participate in what we need to participate in. Kamala Harris also adding that she concedes the election, but she doesn't concede the fight. And I think that this was probably as good a way that this sentiment could be put, given the circumstances.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best.
You know, I felt about this speech both that it was the right speech at the right time, showing that she's not going to stoop to what Republicans stooped to over the last 4 years. But also, I couldn't help but feel that the speech was also representative of sort of why Kamala Harris lost, in that there was a lot of generic pie in the sky without necessarily offering the tangible vision for what's next that I think a lot of people need. But in her defense, it's tough to do right now. I mean, I tried to do it yesterday. We still lost 10,000 YouTube subscribers, 200 paid members, 400 subreddit followers, 1,000 followers on Twitter, 2,000 on Facebook. I'm not saying, oh, pity me. I'm saying this is happening. The Midas Touch guys lost 30,000 YouTube subscribers yesterday. Brian Tyler Cohen lost 10,000. Our friend Jesse Dollemore lost a bunch. You know, all this is public information. There is a despondency that makes sense, and we need to do what is best for our mental health, but we also need to do what's best for our communities and what's best for our friends and family and children and grandchildren. And right. So in that sense, there was some good stuff from Kamala Harris, including sort of a request or a suggestion that people not despair.
To the young people who are watching, it is... I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before.
So, a fine speech, a mixed bag, a really difficult time for the half of the country that did not vote for Donald Trump. And I don't know that anything really cuts through to the core of the situation more than when they lose, they immediately bring up the fight. And unless we do the same when we're ready, I'm not saying it has to be today. Do what needs to be done for mental health. But if when they lose, they double the fight, we have to figure out what is the next step. And it can't just be saying bye-bye, because then everybody loses. Finalizing the speech, Kamala Harris wrapping up in a typical fashion.
There's an adage an historian once called a law of history.
By the way, an historian. Interesting. So we have another in the bucket of it is an historian.
True of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. HU. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
So to be totally transparent, in a normal world, this speech is a 6. The fact that there was not even any doubt as to whether she would be conceding or starting to incite riots or whatever the case may be, that certainly does count for something. We now must deal with RFK wanting to end water fluoridation and much more. We'll get to that a little bit later. That's the situation in which we find ourselves. You know, many of us have said it might be nice for George W. Bush to come out and say something like, hey, you know what? It's probably not a good idea to vote for Donald Trump, even though I'm a Republican. George W. Bush didn't do it. Many of us, not because we thought it would necessarily be dispositive, but because we thought it would be the right thing to do, have been saying, you know, Romney said he's not voting for him, and we have this growing list of Republicans, Dick Cheney, etc. What about George W. Bush? Well, George W. Bush has finally put out a statement, and he put it out after Donald Trump won. And I'll be honest, it's pretty damn pathetic. George W. Bush putting out the following statement, and I quote, "I congratulate President Trump on his election as 47th President of the United States of America, as well as Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and their families. I also thank President Biden and Vice President Harris for their service to our country. The strong turnout in this election is a sign of the health of our republic and the strength of our democratic institutions." By the way, that's simply not true. Trump seems to have gotten a little bit more in terms of total vote than 2020, and Harris significantly less than Biden. By all accounts, turnout went down. We had weaker turnout. I don't see strong turnout here. I see weak turnout. Okay, who cares about the facts, right? George W. Bush continuing, "Laura and I are grateful to the election officials, poll workers, and volunteers who oversaw a free, fair, safe, and secure election. We join our fellow citizens in praying for the success of our new leaders at all levels of government. May God continue to bless our great country." You can't help but feel that it's too little too late. And at this point, I mean, listen, one of the things we did learn is if Josh Shapiro had been the VP nominee, Harris still wouldn't have won. Okay. If Biden had stayed, he still wouldn't have won. If George W. Bush had come out and endorsed Kamala Harris, she still wouldn't have won. It's not about that, but there is something particularly feckless and pathetic about Bush. You know, he hands candies to Michelle Obama, and he talks about, in sort of coded language, how Trump's really not his cup of tea, but then silence until Trump's the president-elect. It's feeling pathetic to me. Let me know if my feelings are out of line. Well, one of the things that we suspected was that Donald Trump saw winning as a way to keep himself out of prison. And it seems, at least to some degree, that he was right. Sometimes they're right. You've got to hand it to Trump. It seems as though he's going to keep himself out of prison because he won. NBC reports the DOJ is moving to wind down Donald Trump's criminal cases, the federal ones, of course, this doesn't relate to the state cases. They are going to wind down Trump's criminal cases before he takes office. The reporting adds, the step complies with long-standing Justice Department policy that a sitting president can't be prosecuted, according to two people familiar with the matter. Let me remind you, The word policy is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. It's more of a tradition. It's more of a convention that the DOJ does not prosecute a sitting president. The word policy seems to go pretty far beyond reality. And just like that, poof, like a miracle. Remember when Trump said COVID's just going to go away in April of 2020 with nobody dying, like a miracle? Well, that didn't happen. But just like that, the Department of Justice's federal prosecutions of Donald Trump go kaput, and the possibility of consequences to Trump for his rampant criminality are no more. The law doesn't apply, apparently, to Republicans anymore, despite their continued claims that they are the party of law and order, and it is law-breaking, scofflaw Democrats who flout the law with impunity. Happens to be the opposite of what they say. So listen, there's a lot of bad news here, okay? We saw yet again a clueless, cognitively declining demagogue become the president-elect. We are going to see, I know I keep going back to it, it's because it's so disturbing. We are going to see potentially Robert F. Kennedy Jr. take charge of overseeing a number of different medical organizations in the United States. The possibility of holding Trump accountable at the federal level has evaporated, and he will not be held accountable. There is no doubt that there is a lot of bad stuff going on here. And the choices are, we let it all happen and more unopposed, or we get in the fight. And the fight is going to include that even if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets put in a position of power by Trump medically, there are still many things we can do, which we will talk about later on in the show and with members of Congress upcoming and a lot of different things. So I think that it's important even to strategize to understand the full scope of everything that is going wrong. Trump is not going to be held accountable. That's a disaster. Clueless people are going to be put in positions way over their heads. Elon Musk, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., maybe Alina Habba, who the hell knows? It's all going to be bad. And in understanding how bad it can be, we are going to realize this stuff really does matter. And to the 50% of the country that goes, I don't even vote, I just don't think any of this stuff matters, we are quickly going to see just how much it matters. And then we will figure out what it is that we want to do. So let's take a break. Thank you to the hundreds who pre-ordered my book yesterday. This is so crazy. Somehow, my forthcoming book, there's a lot of people are disengaging after the election results. Somehow, after this disastrous election, my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, has jumped to #1 in the democracy category on Amazon and #2 in the fascism category on Amazon, right behind our friend Ruth Ben-Ghiat's book. This is absolutely insane. The book is still in pre-order, so thank you to the hundreds, I don't even have final numbers, hundreds at least who pre-ordered the book yesterday. We're going to keep moving forward, and the show continues in just a moment. I spend a lot of my day in front of screens, and sitting for long periods has been linked to poor heart health, bad posture, diabetes, the list goes on. And this is one of the many reasons I started using an Uplift standing desk many years ago, long before they became a sponsor. I stand when I'm doing work at the desk. I sit to film, and it's all on the same adjustable desk. A standing desk boosts my energy throughout the day, makes it easier to stay alert. I use the desk for everything. I'm sitting at it right now. I use it every day to record. I've tried a ton of different standing desks. A lot of them are wobbly or cheap. They don't provide cable management options. I've stuck with Uplift Desk for so long because it is rock solid and stable, built to last, super high quality materials. And they offer way more customization options. So many different things: keyboard trays, file cabinets, headphone holders, desktop computer trays, and everything you really need. And their desk configurator tool lets you customize it exactly the way you want: storage, ergonomic seating, wire management, all of it. And Uplift Desk is giving my audience up to $300 off plus 4 free accessories when you go to upliftdesk.com/Pacman. The link is in the description. If you've ever struggled with sleep, melatonin can be a good option. No crazy side effects like the prescription drugs, and proven to work. And the most relaxing way to enjoy melatonin before bed is a nice mug of Dream Hot Cocoa by our sponsor, Beam. Dream is a flavorful hot cocoa with a dose of melatonin designed to ease you into restful sleep. Comes in flavors like mint chocolate chip, chocolate peanut butter, sea salt caramel. Dream has no added sugar. It's naturally sweetened with monk fruit and only 15 calories per serving. I'm a big fan of Dream's cinnamon cocoa flavor. Warm, soothing, a perfect way to wind down before bed. And as a relatively new parent, I can tell you I have a whole new appreciation for sleep, being up at many various hours of the night with my daughter. And Dream Hot Cocoa puts my sleep rhythm back on track, helps me fall asleep and stay asleep longer, as melatonin is clinically proven to do. I've been recommending Beam for a while now, and there's never been a better time to finally try it, because right now they're giving you up to 50% off their biggest sale of the year. Don't forget, Beam also makes a perfect holiday gift. Go to shopbeam.com/David and use code David. The link is in the description. In this new era, the David Pakman Show will, of course, continue to be primarily supported by our viewers through the membership program. Now, the bad news is, and this does bring me no joy, that in the last sort of 24 hours, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400. Okay, about 400 people subscribed, but sadly, and very, very tragically, 200 canceled. We talked yesterday about what's going on. There's no reason to belabor it again, but what I will say is, thanks to the folks who are signing up, you can use the coupon code not again at joinpakman.com to get a 75% discount off of the cost of a membership. Thank God that there was no voter fraud in 2024. It would have been terrible if there was voter fraud this time, wouldn't it? Of course, I'm being completely sarcastic. With Donald Trump, it's did he win or was it rigged? I want to introduce this topic with video of Golden State Warriors basketball head coach Steve Kerr, who had the same idea and said, I'm just glad there was no voter fraud this time, because that would have been really terrible. Here's Steve Kerr.
Where you kind of hope the country kind of goes from there?
Well, I mean, I believe in democracy, and I think the American people have spoken and voted for Trump, and I want him to do well the next 4 years. I want our country to do well. So I'm just thankful that there wasn't any voting fraud this time. You know, it's last time, I mean, all those illegal immigrants who crashed the border and raped and murdered people and then voted 6 times. That was unfortunate, but thankfully this time everything was clean. So it's great that every election has been really valid, except for that last one 4 years ago. So twinkle in my eye as I say that, in case you couldn't see it.
I think you all get the point. Now, it almost, the day before the election, Donald Trump started with there's fraud in Pennsylvania. Law enforcement is coming out. Detroit is calling out police because what's going on at the polling places is clearly not okay. And then all of a sudden it looked like Trump was going to win. Not a word about voter fraud. I do want to point out that while 99% of us recognize that there was not voter fraud, there are little bits and pieces. There's one particular Twitter thread that my attention was pointed to from a user who goes by Springtrap, which I encourage you to read through it. It makes a whole bunch of different claims about the number of votes, the order of counting, how certain states could have been called so quickly, presenting so-called evidence of fraud. I looked through it. I simply don't see it. Okay? Now, there are people who wrote to me and they are angry and they are saying, David, when we have 20 years now, or not 20, 12 years, certainly since Romney ran against Obama, we have 12 years now of Republicans making it harder for people to vote, closing polling places, purging voter rolls, all of these different things. How can you say that there wasn't fraud? And I think we on the left have to be really careful with this because these are two different things. I have covered as much as anyone the efforts from Republicans to make it tougher to vote, mostly unsuccessful efforts for various voter ID schemes, shutting down polling places, voter purges, etc. But I can't honestly tell you in looking at the results that the purge of 4,600 voters in Virginia, some of whom actually should have been removed because they moved elsewhere. And part of those, of course, would be Harris voters. Some of them would be Trump voters. I can't say that that is fraud of the style that some are alleging took place in 2020 from the Trump campaign. So I am right there with everybody saying it needs to be easier to vote. We need more automatic voter registration. I've got a list of 20 points when it comes to my make it easier to vote plan. But we need to be very careful that those beliefs, which apply to all elections, aren't going to be taken as an opportunity from these Trumpians to go, you guys are alleging the same thing we alleged in 2020. No, we are not. No, we are not. I looked at, on the Friday show, some people wrote to me and said, oh, David, it's the Muslim vote in Michigan is what lost it for Harris. I looked at the numbers. I don't see that. So let's really stick to the facts. And the facts are there was not voter fraud of the kind that Donald Trump alleged in 2020. He genuinely lost 2020. And there similarly is not anything like that type of voter fraud in 2024. Harris genuinely lost. Now, should it be easier to vote? Absolutely. Do we need to keep fighting against these voter ID laws that are designed to make it harder for poor people who disproportionately lean Democratic to vote? Yes, we have to do that. But when I say thank God there was no voter fraud this time, obviously it's sarcastic. Let's not fall into the same stuff that they fall into willingly every single election. The deportations will start on day 1 if you believe what the people around Donald Trump are saying. Now, will they be deportations only of undocumented immigrants? Well, that's the critical question, and we're going to get to that in a moment. Donald Trump's spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, put out a tweet on X, or I think, in fact, it was Axios that quotes her on X. She said, quote, Trump will begin operations to deport millions of undocumented migrants when he starts his term. Campaign press secretary Caroline Leavitt said Wednesday morning. He'll launch the, quote, largest mass deportation operation of undocumented immigrants on day 1. As horrifying as this is to so many of us, if we are going to fight, if we are going to beat this back the way it needs to be beaten back as a political movement, and that's now a question, what happens in 26, what happens in 28? If we are going to successfully beat this back, we need to understand that tens of millions of Americans love this shit. They want it injected into their veins. Did many people not connect with Kamala Harris in a way that inspired them to vote for her? Absolutely. A ton of them stayed home. We know this because Kamala Harris's vote totals are so dramatically below what Joe Biden's vote totals were in 2020, despite a larger American population. But there are tens of millions of Americans who it wasn't about, do I like Kamala or not? It was about, I want what Trump's offering. I wrongly believe that inflation is still high and gas prices are still high, so I'm voting Trump. And I want to start punishing people. Yes, let's start the mass deportations, even if it's just to trigger the liberals. And the terrifying part of it, and this is where it starts to get very, very real and even scarier. Not that this isn't scary, because remember, Obama was going to put people in FEMA camps. But it is Trump who is now plotting and planning to have deportation camps, militarized deportation camps for the mass deportations. If it was only going to go as far as undocumented immigrants, we would have one perspective, but they aren't going to stop with just the undocumented immigrants. I want to talk about that next. Byron Donalds is a Republican congressman. He's a total MAGA tool, a real MAGA-Potamian, if I ever saw one. And he was on MSNBC yesterday, and he isn't even hiding it. They're emboldened. They are not mincing words. They are going to look at deporting legal immigrants in the United States. Legal immigrants. This isn't the first we're hearing of it, but it is certainly one of the more prominent statements about it since the election. Here's Byron Donalds. Listen to what he had to say.
Young men and women, recipients of DACA that know of no other country but this one. And there is, among those people and many others, a palpable sense of fear for what may the future hold for them. What is your message to those people?
My message is clear. Right now, under the administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, there's been about 500,000 people in our country let in who are convicted of crimes, 14,000 convicted of murder. Those people are going to go home immediately. After that, then you have about another 6 to 8, maybe 10 million, maybe more that have come in through these wide open asylum procedures under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They've overwhelmed our cities. Now, if you want to talk about the people who've been here much longer than that, then we're going to have to get to that one as well. But this is going to be a humane process, because what is inhumane is leaving our borders massively open.
Did you guys hear that? Did you hear what he slipped in there? The people who are here through these asylum processes that Biden has allowed. Now, there are two critical facts about those people. Number one, the legal framework under which they are here has existed for 30 years. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. It dates back to either 1991 or 1993, temporary protected status. It's not anything to do with Biden. And number two, when you say people who are here through these asylum processes, they are here legally. They are here legally. Now, if their temporary protected status expires, they are no longer here legally. At this point, they have to leave or they risk deportation. But that's not what we're talking about. When we spoke last week to Joaquin Castro, he said, well, one path forward is you just don't renew their protected status and then you say you have to go. Okay, that's certainly something that could be made administration policy. But what Byron Donalds is talking about, what Trump himself has been talking about, is not non-renewal. It's we're just going to have to do something about that protected status. Here is Trump. And I hope that my fellow Latino voters who voted for this stuff are completely confident that this is not something that has the potential to come back and affect some of their friends and family. I know for myself, they're not family, but I certainly know people here on temporary protected status. This could affect them. They don't seem to be bluffing. Here is Trump just a couple of weeks ago saying he doesn't really buy into the concept that the Haitian migrants are really here legally.
Springfield is such a beautiful place. Have you seen what's happened to it? It's been overrun. You can't do that to people. They have to be removed.
So you would revoke the temporary protected status?
Absolutely. I'd revoke it and I'd bring them.
Revoke. Not allow to expire. Not change policy. He would just revoke it. It is people, once again, we're in the Iran deal. Iran's abiding by it. Trump doesn't care. Get out, cancel it. Let's go after Iran. Oh, so the U.S. under Trump can't be trusted to stick to its word. Hey, we have this temporary protected status infrastructure that dates back to the early 90s. If you have it, you can trust that that's the law. Because again, Trump's for law and order. Nope. Trump is going to revoke it. And he says they're going to start deporting those who are here legally. This is what we're up against. And people's lives are at stake. People's livelihoods are at stake. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpacman.com, joinpacman.com. It's great to welcome to the program today Greg Casar, a native Texan, son of Mexican immigrants, community organizer, and Democratic congressman for the 35th district in Texas, which includes both San Antonio and Austin, Texas. It's really great to have you on. It's good to meet you. I wish it were under sort of better circumstances. The votes are still being counted as far as the House of Representatives goes. We know that Democrats have lost the Senate. We know that not by a small margin, Kamala Harris has lost the presidential election. So I want to just start with your diagnosis of what happened. Depending on whether you listen to Bernie Sanders or Simone Sanders, no relation whatsoever. They just both happen to have the last name Sanders. Very different interpretations as to what happened. Is it a candidate issue? Is it an electorate issue? Is it a messaging issue? Was it the wrong vice president? Where is your head right now on what happened?
Where my head is right now is that, of course, if you have a Republican Party that has been entirely dominated by MAGA, completely in bed with billionaire interests, spreading constant lies, of course, you've got a formidable opponent, and we can't take the blame off of them, but that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So I think the question isn't a blame game. The question is, how can the Democratic Party successfully defeat that kind of propaganda and authoritarianism and constant lies? And the way for us to do it, I think, is to make sure we build out a message that puts working people's economics first. And so in that way, I do think that what Senator Bernie Sanders and others have been saying for quite a while about bringing together people across geography, across race, but also, frankly, across ideologies around a working people's agenda first makes a lot of sense. Now, what I do think Senator Sanders has said, but sometimes people misunderstand or mischaracterize, and I didn't hear what Simone Sanders said. I also admire and appreciate her. But what I think also can't get lost is that doesn't mean throwing civil rights or vulnerable people under the bus in the process. In fact, I think what that means is having a big tent, a huge tent on economic issues that brings together all sorts of people saying, we're the folks putting your pocketbook first that are willing to stand up to billionaires and corporate price gougers. But we also are for civil rights. We also happen to not be bigots. But we cannot any longer, I think, have a Democratic Party brand that isn't first about working people and that kind of economic populism that I think is necessary to defeat the level of lies we get, not just from Donald Trump, but being pumped out by people like Elon Musk.
So let's take a couple of those things kind of one by one. I do think it's hard to deny that on the economic messaging, I mean, most people don't know that we had, 50 all-time stock market highs during the Biden-Harris administration already. I saw an interview with a voter, a bunch of young guys who said, we're voting Trump because of high gas prices, when gas prices are at their post-pandemic low right now, and it's sort of a low that's been equaled 3 or 4 times since the pandemic. There's a lot of like check the facts stuff that seems to be kind of failing on the economic message. But to some of the other things you mentioned, I just saw exit polling that among those who believe abortion should be legal in most cases, among that group, they went 49% for Democrats, 49% for Republicans in this election. That seems inconceivable to me unless the propaganda is effective when Trump takes every side of abortion and says, thanks to me, Roe v. Wade was overturned, but actually it's great for states to do whatever they want. But if they do want to ban it, that's okay too. I don't know how you fight against that because the pro-choice vote split 49-49 seems inconceivable to me.
And that's part of what I was trying to say right at the beginning here. The fact is, the propaganda does work. That's why they do it. Constant lying does work. Getting completely in bed with billionaires and having them spend untold amount of money sowing fear and division does work. It's the oldest trick in the authoritarian book. We're not the only country that's dealt with this. This isn't the only time the United States has dealt with something similar to this. Of course, it's different in the modern era.
Yes.
So the question isn't, hey, what did how did Democrats totally fall apart on this? The question is, we have to be like 10 times better. And I don't think any of us have time to complain about the fact that that's unfair. That's the fact. We have to be so much better because we have to tell the truth. We have to unite people, and we have to deal with fighting back against this propaganda machine. And we just have to do it. And we have to do it in this coming election because we can't continue to lose elections. And I think the way to do it is to yes, we have to be the pro-choice party. But I believe that we lost, and you could see it in lots of states where, for example, abortion rights measures passed, or in the case of Florida, got well over 50%, but didn't reach the necessary 60% threshold, where there are certainly very pro-choice voters who said, that they were going to put that in the backseat or in second place or not prioritize it as much because they also wanted to deal with those core economic issues. And to your point about gas prices, I think that we cannot endure winning and losing elections to people like Trump just based on sort of one cycle to another, where the gas price is or where the egg price is. I think they're looking for who is it that's on my side on this issue. And I think that goes beyond any economic policy. It goes beyond any one campaign's message. It has to do with the Democratic Party brand. And I think the Democratic Party brand needs to be rethought and put back together as we are on your side on these issues, whether the price is up or down, whether unemployment is up or down in these different cycles, that we're on the side of good jobs and lower prices, and that's what people think of first when they think of the Democratic Party. And honestly, some of our own voters don't think of us that way first, and we've got to try to put that together, understanding that there's a right-wing propaganda machine doing everything it can to make sure we don't sound like that.
So one issue that I think is a little different along these lines, and it's very much an issue in your state of Texas, relates to immigration, the Latino vote, and mass deportations. The Texas Tribune reports that Trump got 55% of the Latino vote in Texas on Tuesday. Multiple polls show that more than half of Americans want mass deportations. They like it. It's not, I've been propagandized to, or I don't understand. They're like, yes, I want that to happen. I think that's a thing that should happen. As a Latino voter myself, who moved to the U.S. legally, I want some permanent solution to DACA. I'm not interested in deportation camps and mass deportations. I did not vote for Trump, and I have a particular view on this issue. But I can't ignore that I hear from other Latino voters who say, listen, I came here legally. We need the mass deportations. I just like it. I just want it to happen. I'm not confused. I haven't been propagandized to. It's policy I like. How do you win when that's the case?
Look, I believe not only that mass deportations are wrong, but I believe that and saw and experienced how just a few years ago when Donald Trump was last president and they were starting to undo basic civil rights, when they were trying to push the state to be more involved in this kind of deportation and mass detention, that public opinion snapped back against that kind of hatred. So I don't think that voters have some kind of false consciousness and have just bought into this. I think that we have to recognize that people in the media and people that are in politics are also leaders. We're leaders, and that isn't just propaganda. We present who the villains are, we present who the heroes are, we present what the policy solutions are. And what was very clear from not just Donald Trump, but the entire Republican Party, is that they recognized that there was stress in the American public. A lot of voters are stressed out. They have, feeling wages stagnating compared to prices, see rising housing costs, you see worsening healthcare. And I do not believe that we had a consistent enough Democratic Party message that said, no, housing prices aren't going up because of immigrants. They're going up because of Wall Street. We didn't say clearly enough, hey, you're not dealing with stagnating wages because of immigrants. You're dealing with stagnating wages because of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. We didn't say you've got this worsening healthcare issue because of immigrants. That's what we consistently heard from Donald Trump and his allies. We need to say that's because of special interests and the lobby in Washington, D.C. and big pharma. So if we don't, as Democrats, point out who the villains are, then we leave the field completely open for Trump to say, it's immigrants' fault that things are more expensive. It's immigrants' fault that you're feeling economic stress. It's immigrants' fault that the healthcare system is getting worse. But the fact is, they have nothing to do with any of that. You can't find a reliable study in any form, and it also it just isn't true. So your question is, how do you defeat a constant barrage of clear lies? And I think the only answer that we can have is we have to be better at pointing out and telling the truth in a meaningful way. And I just don't think that message got across. And we have to do better at it. And honestly, I think our message as a Democratic Party was like in 10 different places on those issues, rather than clearly calling out who the villains are and not falling into the trap of saying that maybe immigrants are sort of the villains. And I just don't think that works. It doesn't work. In fact, it doesn't work morally. And it turned out it didn't work electorally either.
There are some in my audience who think that part of the solution has to be the Democratic Party as a whole moves way to the left. These are often the folks who say Bernie would have won in 2016 and 2020 and 2024, who say that Kamala Harris sitting down all day with Liz Cheney at public events, no matter what the reason is, even if it's a defense of democracy rather than their view on abortion, it's a bad thing. That kind of playing, hey, we are going to be serious on the border, just not quite as extreme as Trump, right? There's the view that that's all a losing policy, got to go way to the left. On the other hand, there are those who say, I am very much with the Democratic Party on most social issues and on many economic issues, but I think that the border should be taken more seriously than maybe Kamala Harris took it. I think that crime in cities should be taken more seriously. And this, to be clear, is regardless of what the facts are about crime, right? We've talked about this endlessly on my program. This is just a positioning thing. These are very different views. Move way to the left or play a little more Republican light. What do you think?
I think that there is a path that isn't just on that left-right spectrum. And I believe that path means really meeting voters where they are with the truth and with a more populist and authentic sentiment. And to me, that doesn't mean that you are running way to the Republican center right or falling into sort of the traps of being seen as working on marginal issues rather than working people's general issues. And so I do think that on issues of safety, we can't tell people, hey, just because crime is down, you just shouldn't worry about your safety anymore. We absolutely should be talking about people's safety and taking that seriously. And I think a real way of taking it seriously, for example, in Texas, is we know that there is, of course, cartel violence. But you know who the biggest pusher of cartel guns and cartel violence is? It's Republicans and people like Governor Greg Abbott here, who have made it as easy as possible to get weapons of war into the hands of people without background checks. And when I meet with leaders of the Mexican government, for example, the first thing they bring up isn't immigration. It's our gun policies, because the majority of the guns that they get when they bust up a cartel come from the United States, and the overwhelming majority of those come from Texas. So I think we should be owning the public safety issue, but we don't have to own the public safety issue by sounding Republican. We can own the public safety issue by actually taking the fight to those Republicans themselves on issues of immigration. I think we can say, look, immigrants are good, and we're going to defend our immigrant communities, and we're going to stop letting there be people treated like second and third class citizens, which drive down wages for everyone. We should make sure that people who are here and have been here for 10 and 20 and 30 years are able to fully participate in society, and we should have an orderly and legal and humane situation at the border. And it's Republicans that have prevented that. And we should be able to go directly at that issue, because I'll tell you, people in Texas, the overwhelming number of people I talk to, including undecided voters, they aren't at their heart upset with immigrants themselves. Of course, there are always going to be some people, but overwhelmingly people just say, look, the disorder that they see is concerning to them. And so how do we have an orderly system? Well, they would much rather see people be able to apply to be able to come here, have a legal process, have a thoughtful timeline, be able to escape devastation and add to our economy and to our culture here. I think people would buy into that, but we should call out that people like Republican Attorney Ken Paxton here, Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's constantly been, a corrupt elected official, impeached by his own Republican members of the Texas House for his corruption. He's trying to shut down not disorderly immigration. He's trying to shut down the legal processes for migration that the Biden administration tries to set up. So I think there is a way. And if people want to, I'm proudly a progressive Democrat. But if people want to call what I just said more to the center or more to the left, I don't know what to call it. But what I'll tell you is we need and I include my progressive brothers and sisters in this, we need a truthful message that I believe is a progressive message, but that's a majoritarian message, a popular message that brings together a large swath of voters. We can work on persuading voters our way. We can both persuade voters, lead voters, and hold together electoral majorities because we cannot be a minority party.
A couple of quick ones just to see whether we're on the same page. The idea that Tim Walz...
And the answer is I don't know fully yet. We're figuring it out, but this is the conversation we're trying to have.
The claim that Tim Walz was the problem for the Harris ticket and that Josh Shapiro would have led to different results. I don't believe it. I don't even think with Josh Shapiro, Harris wins Pennsylvania based on what the margin was. And I think the risk of that is it brings out latent anti-Semitism. So I just don't think that the VP choice was the dispositive factor here. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't see how it is that, frankly, this entire thing gets solved in the 100-day campaign that happened. To me, sure, we could Monday morning quarterback it and say, if the vice president had done this or that, or if Governor Walz had done this or that, maybe if we really went in Monday morning quarterbacking, we could see how that could change some number of votes in some states and have losses in others. But at the end of the day, I don't think that this was something that was about the last 100 days or even the last 10 months.
Well, if it should have been more than 100 days, should Biden have stepped aside earlier? Would that have helped Harris?
I think, again, the going back and looking at, hey, what should the president have done? What should the vice president have done? I think the theory that I've laid out to you a little bit earlier stands stronger and truer if it actually doesn't have to do with those particular actors in those particular last months. I think we have a broader Democratic Party brand issue that then certainly people could go and look at what the president or vice president or what the campaign could have done to try to play a really bad hand a little better. But what I really want folks to focus on is why is it that we are playing from such a bad hand? Why is it that this kind of election was even close? And I think that the more that people go and try to dissect that last ditch few months part, we're missing talking about the bigger issue, which is why is it that folks think that a Democratic Party whose policies are about freedom in the workplace, freedom of healthcare, freedom to live how you'd like, why is it that people don't hear those policies? Because there's just a general sense the Democratic Party is maybe more for the elite, maybe sometimes for the working class, who knows? That's the core issue. If that was fixed, then I think we'd have been in a completely different place from the beginning. And I think digging into those decisions in those last few months, we end up missing, honestly, the forest for the trees.
We've been speaking with Democratic Congressman Greg Casar from Texas. Really appreciate your time and insights today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Another difficult truth we have to accept is that MAGA's gaslighting on the topic of abortion worked. And abortion and Trump have really been a well-crafted scam now for a really long time. And I think it's worth starting at the beginning. We are going to look at this viral clip a young woman was interviewed by MSNBC as to why she voted Trump. And here's what she had to say.
And I like that he didn't actually plan to ban abortion. He just brought it back to the States.
I like that he doesn't actually plan to ban abortion. He just brought it back to the States. We're going to get to this in a moment, but we have to start at the beginning. Donald Trump has been pro-choice his entire life. And we are to believe that when he was 68 years old, he met a kid that he liked. The kid's mother said, I thought about getting an abortion way back when, but I'm glad I didn't. And suddenly Trump had an awakening as a 68-year-old man. He had never considered this. And he said, you know what? I am the strongest pro-life president. I'm against abortion. It's terrible. And Democrats are doing all these terrible things. And I'm going to speak at the right to life and whatever. All BS. All BS. Crafted by Trump to run as a Republican. And then Trump's approach to politics has mostly been, I will take every side of an issue so that people can just go, oh, I don't like Trump's first position on this issue. I'll just believe that his second position on the issue is the real one. And case in point, on this issue of abortion, since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Donald Trump has both played the position that he would be fine with a federal abortion ban, or that he would not go for a federal abortion ban, that he would be fine with states saying absolutely no abortion, no exceptions, or that there should be some exceptions. He played every side of the issue, and it worked where even some young voters said, I voted for him because he's not going to ban abortion. And here's the critical statistic. This is from senior political reporter Aaron Blake at the Washington Post, who tweeted, in 2022, Democrats won voters who said abortion should be mostly legal by 22 points. In 2024, the voters who believe abortion should be legal in most cases were split 49% for Democrats, 49% for Republicans. It is a disaster of almost proportions that the English language almost cannot accurately describe. That we have one party that has campaigned on ending abortion, celebrated and encouraged Trump to appoint justices to the Supreme Court who would overturn Roe v. Wade. It happened. We now have hundreds of stories of women foregoing care for fear of what might happen legally. Doctors, OBGYNs, fleeing states in order to avoid the possible legal repercussions of providing reproductive care. Women who have died either because they didn't seek care due to the law or they were denied care due to the law. We have all of that. All of that. And it's all the result of one party, the Republican Party. And the pro-choice vote is split 49-49 between Republicans and Democrats. It is mind-blowing. And at a certain point, you know, we don't wash our hands and walk away, but you have to give them credit. You bamboozled people and it worked. You took every side of this issue, tricked people into thinking that you're really the person that's actually for women's bodily autonomy and it's about states' rights and how lovely that, hey, you know what? If New York wants this, but if Texas wants that, then Texas can do it. And that's totally and completely fine, ignoring the real health and life repercussions of it. And then you get 49-49 from the pro-choice, I think abortion should be mostly legal vote. At some point, you've got to say, wow, congratulations. I mean, you did it through lying. You did it through subterfuge. You did it from circumventing law and order rather than coinciding with it. But you convinced these people. Now, it's not just congratulations, you did it. It's also, it's only possible because of the lack of critical thinking, the lack of an epistemological underpinning for so many of these voters, like, once again, this young lady.
And I like that he didn't actually plan to ban abortion. He just brought it back to the States.
Which, of course, it's sort of like when people used to say, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. The Civil War was about states' rights, which, of course, it's, yes, a state's right to keep slavery legal. Roe v. Wade overturning isn't about banning abortion. It's about states' rights. Yes, states' rights to completely ban abortion, criminalize reproductive health, and send women into a situation where some die, some need to figure out how to get to a different state to get the care that they need, and terrorize doctors, some into the point of leaving the state. It's about states' rights. They convinced people, and they are getting away with it. I want to suggest to you that letting an anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist run America's health departments and health initiatives is a very, very bad idea. MSNBC's Vaughn Hilliard interviewed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in West Palm Beach, Florida yesterday, and talked to him about, what do you plan to do? What is the plan here as far as all of the elements of medical that you will be overseeing? And it is very scary, including Bobby telling MSNBC that he plans to clear out entire departments of the FDA.
You say clearing out the corruption in your terms. Would that mean clearing out the top level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go. That are not doing their job. They're not protecting our kids. Why do we have Fruit Loops in this country that have 18 or 19 ingredients, and you go to Canada and it's got 2 or 3?
Would you eliminate any of the agencies?
To eliminate the agencies, as long as it requires congressional approval, I wouldn't be doing that. And I can get the corruption out of the agencies. This is what I've been doing for 40 years. I've sued all those agencies.
He's done lawsuits up the wazoo. Here's what's really important to understand. Whenever I see, here's kind of like the way it works. I criticize this and I go, it's crazy to let Bobby Kennedy have at these government institutions. People come in and they go, David, you've been taken over by Big Pharma. Big Pharma is a disaster. The FDA is a disaster. They've all gotten so many things wrong. And I would say that's right. The FDA has gotten things wrong. Big Pharma certainly has put profit over health many times before. But that's a reason to strengthen the FDA and to make regulation more functional. The solution, when we say, hey, the FDA doesn't always get it right, and Big Pharma has an incentive to lie and cheat for profit, if that's what you believe. Why would the solution be to clear out entire departments of the FDA? The solution would be better and arguably more regulation, and that's not what I'm hearing from Bobby Kennedy Jr. There are people who may not, if you're 24 right now, you were 20 when Trump left office, you were 16 when Trump came into office, you were 15 when Trump ran his campaign. You might not remember how utterly insane it was to see Trump do this sort of stuff all over the country. Robert F. Kennedy also weighing in about vaccines.
You have been a crusader on questioning vaccines. Are there specific vaccines that you would seek to take off the market?
No, I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine.
You will not take any vaccine that is currently on the market.
I'm not. If vaccines are working for somebody, I'm not going to take them away. People ought to have a choice, and that choice ought to be informed by the best information. So I'm going to make sure the scientific safety studies and efficacies are out there, and people can make individual assessments about whether that product is going to be good for them.
Would that include COVID vaccines that are currently on the market?
I want the best science for every vaccine.
It is part of that. During the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, you were questioning the FDA and calling them out for approving the emergency authorization of the COVID vaccines. If you had been in charge of the FDA at that time, would you have blocked the authorization of the COVID vaccines, like you were suggesting publicly?
What I was saying at that time is the vaccines are not going to prevent transmission, which they were telling the public that they would. They were saying, you need to take this vaccine in order to protect grandma. I knew in May of 2020 that the vaccines were not going to protect against transmission because I was actually reading the monkey studies.
But you would not have told the FDA. You would not have told the FDA to block the authorization of the
I would have been honest with the American people.
And so you wouldn't have blocked it?
I would have been honest with the American people now.
So you wouldn't have.
All right, so we're not getting an answer there. And then finally on fluoride, RFK also weighing in.
He's also talked about fluoride in the U.S. water supply. You would seek to ban fluoride in the U.S. water supply?
Well, I would advise the water districts that are currently using it that there's a lot of new science out there. And in fact, there's a federal judge decision by an Obama-appointed judge on October 4th of this year in which he's to send EPA back to the drawing board and said, you've never done the safety studies on this. And by the way...
And so what does that look like? Without debating, without going back and forth on the science?
By the way,
and what it shows
it's
here.
lowering IQ in our children.
What would you, upon January 2025, we're 3 months away here, what would you actually do in your position inside of the White House?
I think fluoride is on its way out.
All right, so he says fluoride's on its way out. It lowers IQ and causes, I think he said, bone cancer there. This stuff has been studied pretty extensively. It is true, seemingly, that with very high fluoride doses, there can be an effect on IQ. Those are doses well beyond any municipality's fluoridation level that I'm aware of. So it is a theoretical risk, but that's the case with, so many different medications or treatments where at outrageously high doses, bad things happen, but nobody's suggesting those doses. My understanding on the bone cancer connection is that is also untrue. I want to know all the science on fluoride. I want to hear all of it. I want to understand all of it. The specific things that RFK is bringing up, to the degree that I've researched them, and it is somewhat of an extensive degree, they appear not to be true. But this is the direction we're going. This is the sort of stuff we are going to be fighting day after day after day in the forthcoming Trump administration. We've got to be ready to do it. On the bonus show today, we will talk about what now with Project 2025. We will talk about how new minimum wage and paid sick leave measures did on Tuesday. And we will also evaluate Bernie Sanders' diagnosis of what happened in this damn election. Bernie had a lot of interesting things to say, and we will discuss them and more on the bonus show. Sign up at joinpacman.com. Use the coupon code Not Again for 75% off the cost of a membership. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. If you struggle with sleep, melatonin can be a great option, proven to work without the crazy side effects you can get with prescription drugs. The most relaxing way to enjoy melatonin before bed is with a hot mug of Dream Hot Cocoa with melatonin from our sponsor, Beam. It comes in a variety of delicious flavors, naturally sweetened with no added sugar and only 15 calories. I'm a big fan of the cinnamon cocoa flavor. I've been recommending Beam for a while now, and there's never been a better time to finally try it because right now they're giving you up to 50% off their biggest sale of the year. Don't forget, Beam also makes a perfect holiday gift. Go to shopbeam.com/David and use code David. The link is in the description. Sitting for hours can wreak havoc on your health and posture. I only use standing desks. A standing desk helps me get the creative juices flowing. It helps me focus and stay productive. And the only standing desk I've been using for years is Uplift Desk. Long before they became a sponsor, I'm sitting at it right now. Uplift desks are rock solid. They offer way more customization options unlike other brands. You can choose the shape, material, color, accessories. The possibilities are endless. Go to upliftdesk.com/Pacman to receive up to $300 off plus 4 free desk accessories. The link is in the description.